My name is Sophie Langdon. I'm 24 years old, and until a few months ago, I'd never kissed anyone, never had sex, never even wanted to. Not really. I told myself it was just how I was, that some people took longer, that maybe I was demisexual or a late bloomer, or whatever label the internet could throw at me to make sense of why I'd never felt that overwhelming desire everyone talked about. But if I'm honest, it scared me. The way people's faces shifted when I told them I'd never been in a relationship. How they paused, then blinked like I was glitching in real time. They'd always try to hide it, but their questions came too fast, like they were trying to make up for my missing experiences with logic. You mean you've never even hooked up with someone? Not even once? What about in college? No crushes at all? I'd lie sometimes, just to make the air feel less heavy. Before we go on, if you've ever felt like the odd one out when it comes to love or attraction, like you missed some unspoken memo everyone else got, then maybe this story is for you. Subscribe if you've ever wondered whether it's okay to feel different, or if you're just waiting for something real. I work in publishing now, assistant editor at a small indie house in Portland. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. I read manuscripts, fix punctuation, write rejection letters. My apartment is small, mostly filled with books and leftover IKEA furniture from grad school. It's quiet. It suits me, but some nights it felt too quiet. I remember freshman year at UCLA. My roommate Casey used to come back at 3 a.m., heels in one hand, lipstick smeared, smelling like vodka and vanilla. "Don't wait up," she'd whisper with a grin before she left. She always looked alive after those nights, like something inside her had been turned on. I used to pretend to be asleep when she came back, not because I disapproved, but because I didn't get it. I didn't understand how someone could just want another person like that, instinctively, viscerally. I never had that urge. Not when the football captain brushed his hand down my arm in chem lab. Not when my best friend Sabrina drunkenly kissed me during a game of truth or dare and giggled like it was nothing. Not even when Julian, my TA in grad school, asked me out and everyone said I'd be insane to say no. I said no anyway. He was beautiful, kind, smart. He even quoted Sylvia Plath once. But when he touched my wrist during coffee, I felt nothing. Not butterflies, not excitement, just static. After a while, I started wondering if I was broken. I'd Google things like, "Why don't I want sex?" and "asexual but want connection," and "Can you be normal without wanting to kiss people?" I read forums where people talked about being aromantic, about being afraid of intimacy, about trauma. But I didn't have trauma. I didn't flinch from touch. I just didn't want it. Not until her. I met Evelyn Monroe on a Tuesday. I was late to a book launch event, cursing the weather and my own poor time management as I ducked into the Thistle Room, a tiny art-lit bookstore that smelled like ink and roasted beans. I was there to support one of our debut authors, a painfully shy poet named Mason. His reading had already started. I stood near the back, wet and windblown and tense, when I noticed her. She was leaning against a shelf of poetry, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on Mason with something like reverence. Her hair was auburn and messy, tied up like she hadn't looked in a mirror. She wore round glasses and scuffed leather boots, and when she shifted, her coat opened just enough to reveal a deep navy sweater that matched her eyes. She didn't smile, but there was something in the way she stood, like she belonged there more than anyone. I kept stealing glances, not because I wanted her. That word still didn't fit me yet, but because my chest felt weird when she moved, like a note in a song I didn't recognize, but couldn't ignore. When the reading ended, people clapped politely and wandered off toward the wine table. I hung back, unsure why I hadn't just left. She walked past me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. She turned. "Did you like it?" she asked. I blinked. "The reading?" She nodded. Her voice was low, soft but deliberate, like every word had already been edited before it left her lips. "Yeah, I said. I liked it. I work with Mason, actually. He's brilliant. Quiet, but brilliant. You're Sophie Langdon, she said, like it wasn't a question. Wait, how did you? I write too, she said. You sent me a rejection 6 months ago. Very kind. Very formal. You suggested I try again in a year. I wanted to die. Oh my God, I said. I'm so sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. You were right. I wasn't ready. I'm Evelyn Monroe. She held out her hand. I took it. And that was the moment. The shift. Her fingers were warm, calloused. The touch didn't jolt me or make my stomach flip. It rooted me. Calmed something I didn't even know was restless. We stood there too long, hand in hand, not saying anything. I dropped mine first. She smiled finally. I'm glad I came, she said. Me too, I replied. And I meant it. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was obsessed, or fantasizing, or planning some future meet-cute sequel in my head, but because something had settled inside me, a feeling I couldn't name, like I'd been watching the world in grayscale, and she'd walked in carrying color. I didn't know what to do with that. Was it a crush? Could I even have those? I replayed every time someone asked me why I was still single, and I shrugged it off. Every time I tried to explain to my sister why dating apps felt like performing a role I didn't audition for. Every time I sat through conversations about hookups, friends with benefits, Tinder nightmares, and felt like I was missing a chapter in the human experience. I wasn't cold, I wasn't scared. I just never met someone who made the world pause. Until Evelyn Monroe. I didn't see Evelyn again for a week. I thought maybe I wouldn't. That she'd forget. Or maybe she already had. We'd shared a moment, sure, but moments don't always turn into anything. I told myself I was being silly, overthinking, making something big out of something small, but the truth sat heavy in my chest. I couldn't stop thinking about her hand in mine. The next Friday, she emailed me, not through my work address. She must have looked up my name from a poetry newsletter or submission list, because it came to my personal inbox. Subject line, you were right about Mason. Just that. Inside, one line. He wrote about sorrow like it was something holy. Want to get coffee and debate it? I stared at my screen for a full 10 minutes before I replied, only if you're ready to be wrong. She wrote back instantly. Saturday, noon, Thistle Room again. That morning, I changed outfits 3 times. I don't know why. I wasn't trying to impress her. That's what I told myself anyway. But I felt like I was on the edge of something, and everything I did had weight now. I wanted to feel like myself. Except I wasn't sure who that was anymore. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting by the window, coffee in hand, messy bun again. The same navy sweater. She smiled when she saw me. And that smile, it didn't feel like a stranger's anymore. We talked for hours, not just about poetry, about everything, about Evelyn's job as a freelance editor, about how she dropped out of law school because it made her feel like a stranger in her own skin, about her little sister who got married at 23 and already had twins, about my mom who kept asking if I was still being picky. At some point, she asked me, have you ever been in love? I laughed, but not because it was funny. No, I said. Not even close. Ever wanted to be? I stirred my tea. I thought I did. I think I wanted to want it, you know? Evelyn just nodded, quiet, patient. I always thought there was something wrong with me, I said. Everyone around me was chasing hookups, texting people at midnight, waking up in beds they didn't recognize. And I was just waiting for something to click. She didn't interrupt. That made it easier to keep going. In college, my best friend was obsessed with this guy who barely knew her name. I remember watching her spiral over him, crying, fantasizing, giving him second and third chances. I'd comfort her, nod along, tell her he wasn't worth it. But inside, I'd wonder, what's that even like? To want someone so much it hurts? You've never felt that? She asked gently. I shook my head. Not with a guy. Not with anyone. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, eyes warm but unreadable. "But you're here," she said. "I'm here," I whispered. After that day, we started texting. Just little things, book quotes, coffee recommendations, dumb observations about people at the grocery store. Once she sent me a picture of a particularly judgmental-looking cat sitting on a mailbox. The caption said, "Me watching straight people make out in public." I laughed too hard, then immediately froze. Why had I found that so funny? So accurate? I typed, "I feel this in my bones," then deleted it. Instead, I wrote, "Poor cat," and sent a smiley face. She replied with a heart. My stomach flipped, not from embarrassment or nerves. It flipped because something about that heart felt right. The next time we met up, we didn't go to the Thistle Room. She invited me to her apartment. "It's quiet," she said, "and I make a killer grilled cheese." It was a Sunday afternoon, drizzling again. Portland never really stopped crying in the winter. She lived on the third floor of an old converted house, the kind with creaky stairs and ivy creeping up the windows. Her place was a reflection of her. Soft, eclectic, kind of chaotic in a beautiful way. Books everywhere, mismatched mugs, a record player that crackled when she played vinyls that smelled faintly of incense and rain. I felt like I was stepping into someone else's life. A life that didn't rush, didn't expect, just invited. We ate on the couch, grilled cheese and tomato soup. She handed me a throw blanket without asking. We watched an old movie I'd never heard of. Her leg pressed against mine lightly, casually, like she hadn't even noticed. But I noticed, and I didn't move. "Can I ask you something?" I said, somewhere in the second act of the movie. She looked over, eyes soft. "Always. When did you know you were into girls?" She didn't flinch. "When I was 16, she said. "I kissed a girl at summer camp. She had pink hair and smoked menthols and broke my heart 2 days later. But the kiss, that stayed with me." I nodded, trying to imagine it. "I always knew," she added. "Even before that. Boys never made me nervous. Girls made me forget my own name." I laughed. "That sounds terrifying." It was, but also clarifying. I bit my lip. What if you don't know? What if you never had the pink-haired girl, or the moment where it all made sense? Evelyn turned toward me then. She didn't reach out, didn't invade. She just said, "Then maybe you're still writing that chapter." It was quiet for a while after that. Just the hum of the old radiator and the rain tapping the windows. Then she said, "Sophie, have you ever wanted to kiss me?" My breath caught. I'd spent years not feeling, numb to everything people said was supposed to make your heart race. And now, I was on a couch in someone's apartment, barely touching her, and I couldn't hear anything but my own pulse. "I don't know what it's supposed to feel like," I whispered. Evelyn smiled. "Neither do I. Every time is different." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just turned my face slightly toward her, and that was enough. Her lips brushed mine, gentle, careful, like a question, not a statement. I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I just felt warmth, electricity, the air tightening in the quietest, kindest way. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. "That okay?" she whispered. I nodded. "I think I'm finally starting to get it." After our kiss, we didn't speak for a few seconds. Not because something was wrong, just because neither of us knew how to break the moment without breaking it. I didn't move. I barely breathed. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I'd say something stupid, like thank you or sorry or please kiss me again, and all of those sounded too big and too small at once. Evelyn didn't rush. She just let her forehead rest gently against mine and whispered, "You're okay." It wasn't a question, and still, I nodded like it was. Because I was. More than okay, really. She looked at me like she already understood the parts I usually kept tucked away. Like I wasn't something strange or missing, just someone unfolding. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide how new all of this was. That night, I went home and lay in bed fully dressed. I stared at the ceiling like it had answers, but no answer came. Just a slow, unfolding warmth in my chest, like something had been curled up tight inside me for years and finally decided it was safe to stretch. I didn't cry, but I could have, if I let myself. For the first time in my life, I felt like I understood what people meant when they said being touched changes everything. I used to think I wasn't built for closeness. I'd watch my friends get lost in people. They'd come into class glowing after a night with someone whose name they didn't remember. My best friend in grad school once told me she couldn't focus until she'd been fucked properly. I laughed, nodded, said same like I knew what that meant. But I didn't. Not even a little. I remember one night in my sophomore year, a guy named Troy asked if I wanted to come back to his place after a party. Everyone said yes to Troy. He looked like a toothpaste commercial and had abs like Instagram filters were built into his body. I said yes because I was tired of saying no and feeling weird about it. We made it to his dorm. He kissed me. I let him. His hands were warm, his mouth practiced, and all I could think was, I wonder if I turned the coffee pot off before I left. He kept going, pressing in, moving like he was checking off steps. I didn't stop him right away. I didn't know how to. He was nice. He didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't do anything right either, not for me. I pulled back eventually, said I didn't feel well. He gave me water and walked me home. I cried in the shower, not because anything terrible had happened, but because I felt broken in a way I couldn't name. With Evelyn, it wasn't like that. Nothing about her touch felt like a performance. There was no script, no expectation. Only the constant, silent question, is this okay? And for the first time, I wanted to say yes. The next time we saw each other, it was a Thursday evening. She'd just finished editing a manuscript for a client who apparently thought commas were optional. I'd spent the day buried in final pass pages that looked identical no matter how many times I read them. We didn't go out. She came over, I cleaned my apartment like my life depended on it, lit a candle that smelled like citrus and something vaguely piney, rearranged my books, then rearranged them again. When she knocked, I hesitated before opening the door. And then she smiled, holding up a paper bag. Pasta and wine. Thought we could carb load and talk about comma crimes. I let her in. Her hair was damp, freshly washed. She wore a gray oversized sweater and jeans so faded they looked like they remembered another decade. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Dinner was chaotic. I burned the sauce. She broke the corkscrew. We laughed until we cried. Somewhere between plates and pouring wine into mugs because I didn't own proper glasses, she stood close to me. Too close. Her fingers brushed mine, then stilled. Waited. I turned to face her, and I kissed her. This time, it wasn't a question. It wasn't careful. It wasn't clumsy either, but it was slow, deliberate, like we were reading each other's breath. When she pulled back, she touched my face with one hand, just her fingertips, and said, "That felt different." It was. She didn't ask what had changed, but I knew. This wasn't about curiosity anymore. This was desire, new, fragile, unfamiliar, but real. We moved to the couch. She sat sideways, legs folded under her, wine in hand. I sat across from her, not touching, but closer than usual. I've never done this, I admitted. Which part? All of it. She nodded once. No pity, no surprise, just presence. Do you want to? She asked. I took a deep breath. Yes, but I don't know how. There's nothing to know, she said softly. We go slow. You say stop if you need to. You say more if you want more. That sounded simple, but the trembling in my fingers told me nothing about this was. She leaned in. Her lips brushed mine again, and again. Her hands found mine and laced our fingers together. We stayed like that, kissing, touching, pausing, like we were learning a language that only existed between us. When her mouth moved to my neck, I exhaled like I hadn't realized I was holding my breath. When her hand slipped under the hem of my shirt, she paused. Okay? I nodded. When her fingers traced the skin above my hip, something in me unlocked. Not panic, not fear. Just this deep, bone-deep knowing. I wanted this. Her. Not because I was supposed to. Not because the world said I should. But because my body, my heart, my skin said yes. We didn't have sex that night. Not in the full, cinematic, everyone is naked sense of the word. But we had something closer, slower, realer. Hands learning, mouths exploring, breath sinking. By the time we stopped, my head was on her chest, her arm around me, our legs tangled in a pile of soft blankets and forgotten pillows on the floor. She kissed the top of my head and said, "You're shaking." "I know," I whispered. "Are you okay?" "Yeah. I just didn't know it could feel like this." "Like what?" "Like coming home to a version of myself I didn't know I lost." She held me tighter. "You didn't lose her," she said. "You just hadn't met her yet." A week after that night, the one with the pillows, the tangled blankets, the touch that didn't ask for permission but waited anyway, I called in sick to work. I wasn't sick. Not in the traditional sense, but something in me was shifting, and I needed time to sit with it before the world asked me to pretend again. I spent the day in my apartment, wrapped in a sweater I'd taken from Evelyn's place, by accident at first, but now very much on purpose. It still smelled like her, like old books and sandalwood, and something warm I hadn't known how to name. I didn't cry. I didn't spin into anxiety. I just existed. Like I was finally learning what it meant to be in my body. That night, she texted, "I can't stop thinking about you." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't believe her, but because it felt like the kind of sentence that used to belong to other people. People who got it, who fell in love, who craved touch, who kissed like it was a native language. I typed back slowly. "I've been trying to think of the right word for what this is." She replied, "I don't need the right word. I just want the truth." I sat with that. And then I wrote, "I want you. And not just when you're touching me. I want you when we're making pasta badly, when you're ranting about broken commas, when you're quiet and I don't know why." Her reply came seconds later. "Then let's want each other and see what we become." The next time I saw her, it wasn't sexy. It was Tuesday and she had a cold. Her voice was hoarse and her nose was pink, and she'd wrapped herself in a quilt like it had something personal against the flu. I brought her soup from the Thai place she liked and a pack of tissues that claimed they were infused with comfort, which she mocked through sniffles. We didn't kiss. We didn't undress. We sat on her couch and watched some awful game show with too much shouting, and she laid her head in my lap and fell asleep with her fingers curled lightly around my wrist. I sat there for over an hour, just watching her breathe. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need more than this, but I wanted more. Not in a rushed way, not in a let's define us kind of way. Just more time, more touch, more Evelyn. Still, the questions crept in. Not from her, never from her, but from the spaces between the rest of my life. At lunch one day, my coworker Jamie raised an eyebrow when I turned down an invite to speed dating. "Still not dating?" they asked. "Kind of," I said. They laughed. "That's vague. You seeing someone or not?" I thought about Evelyn's hand slipping under my shirt, her thumb brushing the line of my hip, the way she whispered my name like it was something fragile she didn't want to drop. "Yeah," I said. "I'm seeing someone." Jamie leaned in. "Guy or girl?" I hesitated, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew how their face might shift. "Girl," I said quietly. "Her name's Evelyn." Jamie blinked, then shrugged. "Cool. Didn't see that coming." Neither did I thought. But I smiled anyway. I told my sister next. "We're not close, but we talk. She's married, 2 kids, suburban, everything." "So," I said on a FaceTime call, staring at the kitchen tile behind her instead of the screen. "I'm seeing someone." She raised an eyebrow. "What's his name?" Her name's Evelyn. Silence. And then, oh, okay. Are you? I don't know, I said. Maybe. I just know I'm not faking it this time. She looked at me then. Really looked. And something in her expression softened. Good, she said. You look lighter. One night, Evelyn and I lay on her bed. Lights low. Rain on the windows again. Always the rain. I was on my back, her head on my chest, fingers tracing slow, thoughtless patterns against my arm. I used to think I was broken, I whispered. Her fingers stilled. Why? Because everyone else wanted things I didn't. They talked about sex like breathing, about heartbreak like a rite of passage, and I just watched, smiled, lied. Evelyn shifted so she was propped on her elbow, her eyes finding mine. You were never broken. I didn't know that, I said. Not until I kissed you. She didn't say anything. She leaned down and kissed my collarbone instead. That night, we had sex for the first time. Not because it was planned, but because we trusted each other. Because we wanted to. Because every touch felt like asking and answering. She didn't rush. She didn't lead like she was the expert. She listened. She asked. She waited. And when our bodies pressed together, it wasn't about release. It was about recognition. I didn't feel exposed. I didn't feel like I was performing. I felt safe. I felt like myself. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets and quiet laughter. Her hand curled around mine. I've never done that before, I said softly. She smiled without opening her eyes. Could have fooled me. I nudged her with my knee. I'm serious. I know. She kissed my shoulder. I'm glad it was with me. So am I. Weeks passed. Winter deepened. The sun stayed low in the sky, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. But inside Evelyn's apartment, the light was always warm. Even when we argued. Even when I got quiet and she didn't understand why. I started calling her my girlfriend. She didn't flinch. She started calling me her partner. I didn't correct her. I didn't need a label to know this was real. But if I had to choose one, that would do just fine. Somewhere in March, I wrote a letter to myself. A kind of private time capsule. It said, You are not late. You are not wrong. You are not missing the map. You are just walking your own path. You weren't waiting for a person. You were waiting for a feeling. Now you know what it means to want. To be wanted back. Now you know what it means to be touched and still feel whole. I folded the letter and put it in a book I'll probably never lend out. Because some things belong only to the person who lived them. Evelyn still sends me poems at midnight. I still wear her sweaters too often. We still mess up pasta and forget where we left our mugs. And sometimes, when we're brushing our teeth side by side, and she looks at me in the mirror like she's memorizing my freckles, I think, This is the feeling I was waiting for. Not fireworks, not labels, just her.